Have you ever started a race feeling as though your body wasn't ready for the pace that you were trying to run, despite in training being prepared to run at this pace, to be prepared for the race and the tactics and everything involved, and yet you still felt heavy, your breathing felt out of whack, and your form was just all over the place? Until about 3 or 5 minutes into the race, where finally things begin to settle. You find more of a rhythm, your breathing calms down, and you have some more life, or you have some more pop in your legs. But the frustrating part of all this is that by the time that this has happened, the race is already unfolded. And if you weren't stubborn enough to really convince yourself that, hey, it's going to get better, you can lose that mental battle that happens when you start a race and you don't feel good. So now the question is, can we prepare our bodies more effectively before a race to reduce or possibly prevent this from happening? In today's episode, I'm going to talk you through a topic called priming, and I'm going to give you some concrete examples of how you can elevate your warm up to better prepare yourself for the potential of reaching your maximal performance on the day. My name is Coach Dylan Bellis. I've worked with over 1,000 athletes over the last decade. I'm a 2:16:59 marathoner and certified tryhard. This is a topic that is near and dear to me. I've been constantly tinkering with my warm-ups, especially over the last 2 years, so that I can better prepare myself for the demands of the races that I'm facing. And I feel like I'm starting to get a better grip on it. And I've found through my own coaching practice that many of my athletes who have used and employed these strategies have also felt as though they were more prepared, not only for race day, but also in preparation for their more intensive efforts within their training. So if you like this episode, or you're enjoying this type of topic or this kind of video, please do consider subscribing to the channel, give me a like, and leaving a comment down below. Okay, let's get on with the video. So most runners, we of course understand the role of a warm-up. We know that we need to do this so that we can perform better. Most of us aren't waking up right out of bed and just hitting personal bests. We need some time to loosen up, to improve things like muscle temperature, blood flow, increasing the mobility. I don't know about you guys, but I feel really stiff in the mornings, especially. It takes me a few minutes, a few miles to really start feeling like I'm alive and I'm able to run faster. So the warm-up is really important for just increasing the blood flow, getting my body temperature up, and then making sure that my movement is more efficient and not like a rigid, stiff person that I've come to be those first 5 or 10 minutes of my run. But the interesting part of all this is that we know that this is helpful. We know that the warm up is an important thing to do, but there's more and more research going to an addition to our warm up, that doing just easy running before a hard workout or a race might not be enough to maximize our performance of that workout or that race itself. To begin solving this issue or talking more about it, we need to actually start at the race itself or the hard workout that we're doing and work backwards from there. So what you need to know is that when a race starts, your muscles begin to produce energy immediately. But there is a delay between the onset of the run itself or the race and the point at which the oxygen that you're consuming rises to match the demand of your effort. So you start the race, the oxygen takes a minute to actually catch up, but the faster that the oxygen rises, the faster the aerobic system contributes to energy production. Now, the slower that it rises, the greater an oxygen deficit you are at the start of a race, which would explain why those first few minutes before a race, they feel like you're underground, like you're kind of working yourself up to that place of steady running. Now, this is really important for events that last from, let's say, 4 to about 40 minutes. I'd extend this out to even like the half marathon in some cases, but it's really important from the mile to a 10K. And of course, a lesser degree to 13.1. And we'll talk more about that because I still do employ the strategies I'm going to get to later in the half marathon distance. But what all this does is explains why it takes time to settle into a groove at the earlier part of a workout or a race itself. One of the foundational studies in this area comes from a researcher by the name of Andrew Burnley, which happened in 2005. And what he found in this study, that doing a bout of heavier exercise before a subsequent harder effort actually accelerated oxygen uptake kinetics. So in practical terms, what this means is that the aerobic system responded quicker. Now, there was another important finding that came from Bailey and colleagues in 2009. They also found that there were improvements in exercise performance following a bout of severe intensity before and more intensive intensity. But what is fascinating or more important of the study itself is that there was a performance improvement that came entirely from arriving at that higher intensity in a different physiological state. And that distinction is what it matters here, because the goal of race day or the goal of race day warm up or the warm up before a hard workout is not about improving your fitness for the workout or the race. The goal is readiness. And if you can improve your body's state of readiness, chances are that you'll be able to maximize that day's performance. So what does a typical warm-up look like? Most people are just doing a couple minutes of easy jogging. I've even seen a lot of people who don't warm up at all and they just jump right into these races. I would really highly advise against that. But usually Newer runners will do a handful of minutes. More advanced athletes typically will do between 15 and 30 minutes of easier running, especially before a race like a mile or a 5K or a 10K. Just something that is just low intensity, kind of drag that out for a period of time to help warm the body and get you ready. Now, some people take the next step and they'll throw in something that they call strides, basically these really short, fast bursts of running. They're usually between 10 and 20 seconds, and those are great. They're going to help you prepare your body more neurally. So, better for coordination, recruitment, running mechanics, better turnover. They make you feel good. They kind of raise muscle tension a little bit and just help you be more prepared for the race itself. And starting there is great. For many, many, many years, this was all I did. I did an easy 2-3 mile warm up, 15, 20 minutes warm up, and then I would do a handful of strides, 4, 5, or 6 maybe, and then I'm off to the races. These are fantastic. But what this might not fully address is the aerobic activation component of all of it. And this is where the priming research becomes interesting. Now, rather than thinking of the warm up as just one thing, we're just going to complicate it a little bit. And we're going to think about it in 3 different layers. Think about that in terms of temperature, aerobic activation, and then specificity. Each of these layers are going to improve a different system and further your body's ability to be ready to race. Layer number 1 is temperature. What this is just easy jogging. We're raising our body temperature, we're increasing blood flow, we're reducing some of that natural stiffness that comes from no activity to some activity. And for most runners, what this is going to look like is 10 to 20 minutes of easy running. It's very simple, it's effective, and I would say that it's the most necessary piece of these 3 layers. However, for more advanced athletes, I don't think this is sufficient. Layer number 2 is aerobic activation, and this is the piece that I think deserves more attention. The priming literature that we talked about earlier suggests that doing something in the moderate to heavy realm prior to something more intensive can influence the physiological response of that exercise. What does that mean? It just means that doing something steadier before doing something harder can help influence or produce a better race result. And one practical way, which I try to encourage runners to apply in their training, is to do something in the threshold realm between that easy running part of the warm up and the race itself. So, what might this look like? I suggest 2 to 3 minutes. You can expand this realm and you can go all the way up to 5 minutes, but I find that the sweet spot is usually between 2 and 3 minutes of a threshold effort. It's controlled, it's not labored or forced. I don't even want you to put a specific pace on it. I want you to find that nice 7 or 7.5 out of 10 effort and really just find that zone. You're really just trying to bridge the gap between easy running and more intense running. And I find that this really helps bring the body up to speed. Often, I won't do this just prior to a race either. Sometimes if I'm doing or I'm prescribing workouts that are 200s, 300s, 400s, something fast at sub 1500 meter race pace, all the way up to around 5K race pace, I like to throw in a threshold effort before those more intensive reps. And for me, I'll even expand this. We won't go as far as LT2. We'll even back off a little bit and go that 6 out of 10. We'll call it closer to LT1 or marathon pace. And I've asked several people to do anywhere from 1K to 2K or even all the way up to 2 miles or 3 kilometers-ish of LT1 running prior to doing these more intensive sessions. What I find is that people tell me that they feel better once they go into those faster reps. Their body just feels like it responded better to that versus going straight into those harder reps and feeling like it takes 3 or 4 reps before you start to feel like you're on top of the workout. So it works just as effectively for a workout as it does for a race. And for those of you who are time crunched and really don't have a lot of moving pieces, you can't do that full extravagant warm up that maybe you see pros do where they're doing flexibility and mobility and strides and drills and all the above. Easiest thing that you can do if you really want to help bridge the gap and help improve the performance of your workout and reduce feeling like crap the first 1 or 2 reps is you do your easy running. As soon as you're done with that easier running, you do 2 or 3 minutes at a nice steady pace, a little faster, somewhere in between the two, warm up and workout. Take a couple minutes after that and then get into your workout. And I promise you, you will feel so much better for those first 1 or 2 reps. And we can carry this over to race day as well. So just a reminder, these 2 or 3 minutes that we're going to do before a race or before a really intensive workout, these are not all out. It's not race pace. We're not trying to improve our fitness. It's just a controlled, moderate effort. Now, a quick sidebar here to just talk about lactate really quickly, because I think that there might be something more interesting here that I don't have all the answers to, of course, and I'm no exercise physiologist. I haven't done studies here. I've only learned from the people that I've worked with and learned from in the coaching atmosphere, and then the things that I see in research study. But I do think that there's an interesting piece with lactate here, just knowing that Of course, our body uses it as a fuel source. It can be oxidized by muscle, it can be used by our heart. It even has an impact on signaling within our bodies. And now, this might actually explain why maybe having some modest lactate levels in the system might actually contribute to some of those priming effects as well. So it's just a thought process of that, going from just easy running where there's not a whole lot of lactate being produced in the system to all of a sudden doing this all out effort or race and things just spiking through the roof. Maybe getting the body exposed somewhere there in the middle for just a brief amount of time, nothing that's going to linger or last for a long time. Maybe doing that, those 2 or 3 minutes prior to a race or a hard workout, might actually further prepare your body for that session or contribute to the benefits that we already see in the priming model, which is oxygen delivery, muscle temperature, and then the activation side of the equation. Now, layer number 3 is specificity. Once we feel as though the aerobic system has been activated, we can then begin to introduce some race specific work to further tune the body. And this is where maybe 10 minutes before a race, we start to introduce just a small sliver of race pace. So, for example, for a mile, we might do something like hundreds or 150s at mile race pace. So let's just say 2 times 20 to 25 seconds, full walk recovery in between just to get the mechanics, just to get the feel for race pace. For a 5K, we might extend that out a little further. I would go all the way up to maybe a 3 or a 400. So maybe just let's just say meet in the middle here with a 1 minute rep at 5K race pace. So just something to get the body charged up, but it's not going to have a negative impact on your race itself. For the 10K, I'd probably keep it there about a minute, maybe 90 seconds at the most. But for those of us who have pretty intensive 10K paces and they might be running, in the 30-minute range, which is not a lot of us, of course, but the faster you are, I probably wouldn't do as much. But, if you're like most of us and 10Ks are maybe closer to 60 minutes, I think doing a minute to 90 seconds at race pace is a really great way to just make sure that your body's not freaking out when you start the race itself. Now, we can move this all the way up to the half. I personally still do these priming sessions prior to a half marathon. So for me, I'll still do those 2 or 3 minutes at threshold pace beforehand. And then as I get closer to the race start itself, I might still do a minute at just slightly faster than half marathon pace, so threshold pace, just to prepare my body for if the race goes off and it starts a little faster, it's not crazy for my body to react to that and then settle into the pace. Now, of course, we're not going to do anything like this for the marathon. If anything, we're just going to take a few easy minutes and a couple light strides before the race. Now, in addition to our 3 layers here, as close to the race as you can possibly get, maybe 5 minutes out, might want to throw in a couple short strides, 10 to 15 seconds. You don't need to do too many. You can just do one. Some people like to do 2 to 4 of them, and that's absolutely fine. And this further helps sharpen the body to then begin the race. Now that you understand this, we can talk about what elite athletes do. One of the things you'll notice when an elite athlete warms up is that they rarely move directly from easy jogging into race pace, just like we've talked about up to this point. So instead, their warm-ups get progressively faster. So they start with easy running. They progress to moderate running. They do some race specific efforts. They do a few strides, and then they're ready for the competition. This itself isn't proof of anything within itself, but it does align with the broader thinking and the overall structure of what we're talking about today. And it aligns with some of the literature as well of how to take your body from zero and to prepare it to run and perform as best as you can on the day that it matters. So as you see, most athletes, they appear to have like an intuitive sense of how to prepare their bodies to be ready for race day. And this is something that you, even if you're not an elite athlete, can still take and apply to your training. I think that this piece is something that is easily spread to anybody who's towing the line. So let me give you an example of what I might use if I was doing a 5K. Just a reminder, this does take time. So if you are time crunched and you don't have the time to do this, then this might not be the right scenario for you. And you can, of course, condense it down. But I'll give you an example of someone who has the time before a race, is not rushed, and really wants to put everything into their race readiness. Okay, so let's start with 60 minutes before race start. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do some activations. I'm going to do some light mobility. I personally like to do the Cal Poly hip flow. I might bring a rope with me and do active isolated stretching. A Theragun is great to have along, and maybe even some foam rolling. I'm not going to do all of it, of course, but I might just pick 1 or 2 things just to kind of making sure I'm loose and limber because this is an important day and I want to be ready for the race in 1 hour's time. Next, I'm going to do 15 minutes, very easy running. I'm not paying attention to pace or heart rate or anything like that. I'm just jogging around. If I can do that with someone and kind of have a good time and chat around, that's really great too. After that, I'm going to go ahead and change shoes. I'll use the bathroom, take a gel if I need one, get some water, just minor things like that. And personally, for me, I like to do my drills here. So I'll just do some thoracic openers. I'll do some A skips, B skips, some karaoke, anything that you need to do. You can just do some leg swings. There doesn't need to be a specific plan for you here, but if you do drills, I like to do it between the warm up and the moderate session afterwards. So after I'm done with that, I'm going to do 3 minutes at threshold effort. So just steady, honest, bring the body up to speed. Take a few minutes after that to walk around, make sure that I'm good on time. I'm going to do 1 minute hard at 5K race pace after that. Again, walk around. Hopefully by this point, I've got 10 or 15 minutes before the race. And then as close as I can up to the race, I'm going to do 4 really quick strides, stride it out, take a lot of time in between, as much as I can, and now I'm going to be ready to race. So notice the progression. We're increasing body temperature through very easy running. We're activating our aerobic system by throwing in some of that moderate or threshold base running. And then we're briefly tapping into some specificity, whether that's a minute at 5K race pace or just a couple strides leading up to the race. And one key thing that I want to remind you of here is that we need to make sure that this is all appropriate for you. So you might need to adjust some of the lengths of everything because the goal is not to arrive on the race line tired. You shouldn't feel like you did this full workout before your race. Everything should still be under that threshold. It should never feel crammed or that you're going into the race like you're on your last few reps versus you're in that sweet spot right there towards the beginning where your body's feeling fresh. Your goal is to prepare yourself to be on that line and to be as ready as possible to get after it. Last real thing that I wanted to discuss here is that does this matter for every distance? Probably, but it's not equal for every distance. I think that it becomes more important from the mile to, let's say, the 10K, but the importance of it definitely drops off the more or the slower the pace is. So the half marathon, the marathon's not as important, especially not the marathon, where the result is fueled more by fuel availability, durability, pacing, and then your body's ability to regulate heat. You don't want to go through all of this before a marathon, but for every other distance, I definitely think that it's a valuable piece, but it certainly scales in a different manner from the shorter distances all the way up to the marathon. Wrapping things up now, the idea of aerobic priming is something that I believe that there's going to be a lot more focus and a lot more literature on. I mean, even the ones that I talked about today were quite old, and I'm sure there have been new studies that I'm not aware of. But I think that we're going to see more and more of this as we get into the sport further and people find more of an interest. But if you're someone who, like I said at the beginning, finds that it's really hard at the beginning of the race to catch up to speed, and you really want to narrow that gap in so that when you start the race, you feel ready to go, then focusing on a priming effort by going from easy all the way through that process to doing some shorter, faster strides right before your race, I think this can make a huge difference and make a big impact to your readiness and your performance on race day, whether that's physical or physiological or just from a mental side. I know myself personally, I hate when I don't feel good at the beginning of the race, and I've let that ruin some of my race results. So if you're working on the same things that I'm working on, this is one of the things that is in your control and that I think can get you that extra 1% on race day. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what your warm-up routine looks like before an intensive, harder session or a race itself. Drop that down in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate the support and I appreciate you guys continuing to listen and watch this channel. I will catch you guys next week.